Jeff, good to see you as always, my friend. Today's a really great topic that I don't think is talked about a lot, but should be. And certainly there's a lot of great lessons that I would imagine have been learned the hard way around this topic. And it's the topic of burning bridges and why it's important not to do this from a professional perspective, no matter how intense the impulse to do so is. I'd love to get your thoughts on this subject.
Yeah, thanks, Carson. Yeah, you kind of said it best. Everyone kind of learns this one, I think, the hard way. And I think it's no different for myself. To be totally honest, I think there have been times in my life where I've inadvertently maybe reacted a certain way and got emotional about something. And, I think no one ever feels good about themselves when they do that. I mean, in the moment, you might feel vindicated when you kind of go, give someone like the proverbial middle finger or something like that. But usually when the dust settles, you don't really feel very good about yourself or the way you acted. And there's been times in my life actually where I've gone back to people, even fairly recently, and said, hey, look, the way I reacted about this certain thing, I regret, and I apologize, and irrespective of how I feel about like whatever the situation was between us, I just regret the way that this happened. And uh, there's really very few times where you can behave that way and someone won't appreciate you or respect you. And I know in the times in my life where I've gone out of my way to do that, I've always left the conversation feeling very positive about myself. And even honestly, if I didn't get the reaction out of the other individual that I wanted, I felt, proud of the way that I handled myself and felt that maybe it was more reflection on the other individual that they couldn't have grace or, empathy in those situations, right? And you kind of learn not to take that personally and to just focus on what you can do, right? Um, Look, I'll be very honest. I've had ups and downs in my career like anyone else. More recently, I had one of the downs in my career. I had been at a company for almost 8 years. One of its earliest employees company got acquired, and I wasn't really all about staying around in the business. I ended up leaving, and I went through three different companies over the course of 9 months. I said basically three different 3 month stints at three different companies that I just didn't like for various reasons. And had different disagreements in these places, and then I ended up where I am at now, and everything's been great. But that was kind of like a low point in my career because I'd been coming off of like a success of, I'd just written a book, and company had been acquired, and was getting all these like kind of speaking opportunities and things like that. And then I went through like churning through three different companies, and I can tell you, despite whatever frustrations I may have had through this experience, it never once crossed my mind that I should go on like LinkedIn and disparage any of these employers with whom I just didn't have a good relationship. Right? It was just one of those things where it was like I looked in the mirror and said maybe I need to do a better job of picking what I'm going to do. Right? Like maybe I'm the least common denominator, and I need to have a better sense of like what it is that I want to do with my career. And so, whatever feelings I may have had in these different places, whatever challenges I had, you can kind of air those out privately with those people, and you can certainly respectfully voice your opinion. But once you go out into the public, even if you're right about it,
Yeah.
people will judge you, and they'll think you're silly, right? And so it's just never a good idea. So I know you have a pretty cool story that you want to tell about, something that happened to you, and even though it kind of led you to where you're at today, taught you this lesson. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the benefit of having being blessed with a long career is I do have some stories about a lot of topics, and this is definitely one of them. There's a phrase that we toss around a lot. It's not business, it's personal. But, we spend so much time working that for many of us, business is very personal. And that's why it's so easy to fall into this trap. And frankly, nowadays, having social media, it's so easy to be a keyboard warrior and say something that you can't take back. It's a dangerous trap. And I'm glad, frankly, that some of these tools weren't available 15 plus years ago. I have burned bridges a few times in my career, especially in my much younger, dumber days. And there was actually a scenario several years ago where I left an organization, and I mean, I was done. I mean, it was one of these. It was just an awful culture, and I knew I was making the right decision, and I had two different projects I was exploring. One was with one of the biggest companies in the world, not one that I worked at, actually one that I ended up turning down before, but that I was getting ready to start a project by a set date. And another one was a another organization that I ended up working for that I was kind of sold a bill of goods. And I ended up having to go back to this other organization after I had told some of the senior leaders at this organization exactly how I felt and why I was leaving. And I kind of went out with, I felt really great in the moment. I'm like, man, I told them. And keep in mind, this was several years ago. So I think sometimes the benefits of getting married, having a family, you probably don't take those types of risks. But when I was much younger and didn't have a lot of those types of commitments, I just kind of threw caution to the wind. And I knew I was right in the situation. The culture was awful. I was able to give them specific examples of what had caused not only my exodus, but the exodus of multiple others, and that there was more coming because of how they were managing their company into the ground. And, you know, again, I felt great in the moment, but sadly, both of those ventures I was exploring just a few months later didn't pan out, and I didn't have a paycheck. And it was very humbling. I had to go back to these folks and in essence ask for my job back after I'd done that, and they didn't give it to me. Now, in parallel with that, and not long down the road, I had actually had someone else that I had worked with previously, and I had what you would call a frenemy relationship with this person. We were both very, very, very competitive. In fact, he was top dog in this market until I came along. And so we had a very friendly competition of competition that I won. And, we could have burned bridges there too. But ironically, he actually ended up recruiting me to my next role, which happened to be where I am today, 9 years ago. So, just a long story short, or I guess long story long, um, burning bridges is never a good idea, even if it feels good in the moment. To your point, Jeff, even if it's justified, whatever it is, don't do it. And I read an article about this recently, and there was a line that really just stuck out to me that I think I want to end on. The benefits of preserving professional relationships far outweigh any temporary satisfaction gained from severing ties. That's powerful. That's my mic drop moment.
Love it. Yeah, no, that's 100% right. Like you said, like no one knows the context of any of these things when you know what I mean? So when you go out and even if you're right about it, no one knows that, right? So it's just always a good look to just keep it moving, like you said.
Keep it moving. Always. Perception is reality. And if somebody sees you, whether you're justified or not, out there acting a clown, they're going to think you're a clown.
For sure. We'll end it there. Thanks, Carson.
Thanks, Jeff. See you next time, bud.